Hey there, guys. This is Malorian, and this is a video that people have been asking for a while. And I've tried doing a couple of videos, and it just didn't really come out right. So I thought, hey, what's the best way to do this? Let's just do it live. We'll do this one take. We're doing this Calculon style. But anyway, this is going to be on the Age of Sigmar. Now, if you're one of my new viewers who are coming this more from a Warmachine thing, this probably isn't for you. This is probably more directed for the people that play fantasy, that are interested on the Age of Sigmar, or it's also for those people who have wondered why I've transitioned and what my thoughts are on the current game systems. Because what I'm going to do is I've also had a lot of questions on why did I eventually leave Warmachine or leave fantasy for Warmachine? Would I ever go back? What are my thoughts on it? So I'm going to try and use this video as something that's going to explain how I got into the hobby, how I got into fantasy, how I moved on to Warmachine, and then I'm going to talk about what I think about the Age of Sigmar and where that leaves us now. So for those who don't know, way back, I just was playing video games. I was really big into playing Final Fantasy and stuff like that. And it turned out that my girlfriend at the time had a cousin who didn't really have a lot of friends, but he loved playing 40K. And so I thought, well, I can play with him. So he played Tau, I played Necrons, we played a lot of games, but eventually, whereas I really started grabbing onto the game and doing very well, he didn't really focus very much. He lost a lot and just lost interest in the game, so left it. Well, I still love the game. I love 40K. Just this idea where you get to set up a table with this terrain, you make an army, you have these scenarios, and you're trying to battle with your opponent to see who made the best army that can cover all these situations so that when the scenario comes up, you can beat them. So I really love the idea, and I really got into 40K. With that, I had a group of people that I played with, and man, we just played all the time. Just it wasn't like fluffy stuff. It was like, no, you were taking the best list and trying to kick in face every single time. And as we did this, I started realizing the problem with 40K, where first of all, it comes down to the guns. These guns have ridiculous range. You're playing on a 6x4 foot board, and when you have guns that are 4-foot range, it doesn't matter, right? Maybe if you're trying to shoot from corner to corner, but there's other stuff that shoots even farther than that. It's ridiculous. Usually you're just always in range. Sometimes terrain can be in the way, but with some careful placement, that's not really an issue. And so a lot of times you didn't move. You just set up your stuff and you'd shoot. And a lot of the scenarios that in the first editions of 40K that I was playing in, they're really different, and there are bunkers and all this stuff that you'd be doing differently, and they would really change the way that you take your list and all this. They started getting a lot more just watered down and simple, whereas like, oh, okay, well, basically I just take stuff that kills you, so I want to pack in my stuff with that's really just meant for killing and shooting, because range is pretty much better than melee. And then after I shoot you for 4 turns, then the last couple of turns I jump on the objectives. And it really then got down to as well, my second biggest issue with it is that it really came down to first turn. Because if I get first turn, hey, I get to shoot first, kill your stuff, hooray. Whereas if you get first turn, oh no, now you're shooting down my key stuff. So really, those things just made me start to lose interest with 40K. Some of my friends just got right out of it because they didn't like it. I said, you know what? Let's look into this thing called fantasy. Fantasy is looking kind of interesting. It's the same type of idea where you're having all this terrain. I can still use all the terrain I had. You still use the same mat I have, but it looked like it had a lot more to it. And really, the thing I loved about fantasy from the very beginning was the idea of the movement phase. Now, for fantasy, or so for 40K, you just go wherever you want, right? You take your model and you say, I'm going to go this way. So it didn't really matter if something was flanking you or whatever. I still just could shoot you no matter where you are. I mean, I can put my guy together so that he's just like shooting into the sky, and I can still shoot everywhere around me. Nothing really matters. I could charge anywhere. It's so loose and free. Well, in fantasy, that was not the case whatsoever. You had to set down your models. You had to really plan out the battlefield. What's going to move where? What's going to cover what? it was a lot more of a feel of chess where, okay, this model's going to come up here and I'm going to bait and I'm going to counter and I'm going to lead you this way. I'm going to hit a flank. And that movement phase was so ultra critical. Now, for some newer fantasy players or for Warmachine players who don't know, editions ago, a couple editions ago, it was a massive deal. If you charged on the flank, well, okay, first of all, if you fled, you were forced to charge and chase them. You could not redirect. You were going that direction. You were locked in. And then if you hit that flank, well, whoever charged got to go first. You only got to attack with the models that are base to base. There's no step up or anything like this. And then so if my 4 models attacked you and killed 2 of your models, we're only having 2 fight back. Then I have all the static combat res. The whole idea of steadfast wasn't there, so you would probably break and I'd run you down. So it was massive to get flanks. Getting the charge and controlling the movement phase was huge. And as well was the range, right? If I take bows or something like this, I might have like a 24-inch range, but that's really it. We're not really seeing these weapons other than the rare cannons that can go across the whole board, right? It's a lot more controlled here. It's not like with Marines where, okay, I step up and almost everything can fire their bolters into the enemy. It's no, okay, maybe I can fire this cannon, but that whole idea of infinite range was just gone. It was more now so about the movement phase, and I loved it. It was great. So I played that, loved it, was all over it. And then 8th came out, and 8th was a little bit different. 8th really changed it so that, okay, the movement phase is still important, but now you can redirect the charge. So baiting wasn't that massive. And as well, if you charged in, there was step up. So getting off the charge wasn't that big of a deal. There was steadfast. So even if you get flanked, as long as I have lots of models, I'll stay there and I can just reform and beat you later. So the focus on the movement phase kind of left it for me. But sorry, I got a little bit cold here. But anyway, the biggest thing too that I love about fantasy as well is just the idea of it, that you have all these models, this massive epic scale of all these guys, and this massive battle that's going on. 2 of the games I want to kind of really bring up that were my favorite games in fantasy back in 7th or prior editions was one where I was up against Russell. For myself, I was running Bretonnians, all these knights and all these mounted yeomen and things in the front. They're going to redirect you. And he was running his Warriors of Chaos with his Chaos Knights and all of his Hound units all over. And that game was, I wish I still had the pictures, but man, that was a great game to play because there's all this careful positioning where, okay, this, I'm going to move up here to redirect you, and then I'm going to go here to redirect those dogs, and then I'm going to set up so I could kill those dogs and still be a redirect over here. But even if you go through, then this is going to counter this way. Man, it was just this complex thing that we had going, and you could not miss a beat. If you angle something wrong or did a wrong flee or something like this, that was the game. It wasn't really to do with who rolled the most dice or who got the best dice rolls. It was all about that positioning and trying to outthink your opponent. So I really love that. Another one that I say would be my favorite for the other type of game was up against Once Bitten. We were doing one where it was over the webcam. I was doing the models on my table. He watched. It was a lot of fun. But basically with this, we did it. So it was Bretonnia versus Bretonnia. I was all the knights. He was all the peasants. It was this whole story behind it about what's better, knights or peasants. And it turned into this convoluted mega battle. So again, on one side, knights all over. On the other side, massive blocks of infantry. And we just start fighting. It's like, okay, we fight, we lock in here. Another one counters, another one counters, another one counters. And it turns into this massive battle. Now, you could almost say that it was like 40K because we're just there rolling lots of dice for every combat, but you could really feel this epic style of the game where it's really these massive armies fighting. It's this massive thing going on, and it was eventually one side broke, and it was this big, huge rundown, but it felt like a big medieval battle, and that's that feel of fantasy was really there. So either way, we get to 8th. I'm still having lots of fun playing it. I got my orcs. I got my super orc flying around doing cool stuff like that. And eventually around this time, I move. And the people where I move to work don't play fantasy. If I want to get a game in, it's very difficult. They don't like my style of play. They like playing it more for like beer and pretzels. I want to get some more tactical game. But really, everyone's playing Warmachine. All around, everyone's playing it. So I thought, okay, to make sure I can get a game every week, let's try Warmachine as well. And wow, it was everything I missed from Fantasy 7th, 6th edition. The whole idea where, okay, sure, we're still on round bases now and we can walk wherever we want, but we have arcs. I can only see my front arc, and the charge is really important because on my turn, when I charge, only I'm attacking. So setting this all up so that I'm getting the charge and then I'm trying to draw you in and counter charge, it's a very big part of the game. And as well as the scenarios in Warmachine, where back in the day with the older 40K, there's all these interesting scenarios that force you to do very different things, and eventually got a lot really watered down. Like I said, where you just have to really kill stuff. Fantasy was the same way, where it kind of got watered down, where a few of them made it a little bit different. Watchtower, I mean, a lot of people hated Watchtower because they had to play a very vastly different game, but I loved it because it actually forces you to play a different game, and you can actually win the game without having to kill everything around you. If you focus on this tower, you win. And this is what you got in Warmachine. You were after these zones, you were after these flags, and I might not be able to beat these guys over there, but if I block them and hold them away while I score, I can get the points and I can win the game on scenario. And it was such a great game with these micro interactions that really took a lot of thought, that really brought me back to what I loved about early editions fantasy. So eventually I got to this hard spot where I was wanting to do very well in Warmachine and I was wanting to do very well in fantasy. And the problem with that is that they both took a lot of dedication. If you want to do well in these games, it's all about knowledge. When I'm playing fantasy, I need to know what your army does. I need to know how it attacks, what the special rules are, so that I can really not fall into your traps and I can use them to my advantage. It's exactly the same thing in Warmachine. And when I'm going into this, I need to know everything about your army so I know exactly what you're capable of, what I need to avoid, and what weaknesses you have that I can attack. And the problem is I couldn't really handle both. There's just way too much information, plus there's regular life, that I had to decide which one to do. And I decided, you know what? Let's try letting fantasy go, and we're going to do Warmachine. We're going to focus on Warmachine, and we're going to see how far I can push it. Now, the hope was that GW was going to re-release or come out with 9th edition, and they're going to come back and make a real tactical game. So I was going to wait for that. Meanwhile, the Warmachine, I was going to see how well I went, and I didn't make Team Canada. I highly doubt I'm going to make it next year either, but I am actually at that level where I'm fairly good. If people see me in a tournament, and I get to play all the games, you should expect to see me, like, you know, in the upper echelons, not winning every tournament, but I should be one of those top players. So that's where I wanted to be. So hooray! But where does that leave fantasy? Well, now we have this, and we're at the Age of Sigmar. And I was like, okay, let's see where we're at for this. And luckily, I had a good friend of mine that went and sent me the rules. I was like, well, that's fantastic. I really want this to be something where they go back, make it a very tactical game, and man, I'm going to have to go and maybe get back into this earlier than I thought. Well, right off the bat, I look at these rules, and it's 4 pages, and it's just flags going up because, sure, you can have chess. Chess could be a 1-pager rule set, and it's a very tactical game. But it's also a very simple game where it's on a grid, and it's really simple where things move. Fantasy isn't really like that. Fantasy, the way that I see it, is more of a more complex game with interactions and terrain and all these other things. And how do you cover that in 4 pages? So flags are going up before I even read this. Well, the next thing is I'm looking at the models where I'm seeing all the pictures coming in, and they're on round bases. So wait a second, what's this all about? I knew I was following up on the rumors. I knew this was probably going to be a thing, but okay, let's see where this goes with this. And then I went in and I started reading the rules, and it's not good, guys. It's not good whatsoever. There are good spins on it that I'll get to, so if you're waiting for that Malorian positivity, it's coming. But whereas I was hoping coming into this would be this totally fleshed out game. That was going to be rock solid, no FAQs needed. You know, this would be a big competitive game for if you want to get that game going. This is not that. I mean, the very first thing he's talking about is when you're making your list, you just take whatever models you want. And sure, when you go to a tournament, people are going to say, well, no, this is a whatever size game. But then the points aren't, it's really not there to play as a competitive game. And it made me think of what GW has been saying this whole time, where whenever somebody asks GW, please, can you just make your rules good? And they say, well, we're not a competitive company. We make models. And this really made me think, like, wow, this is what they're trying to do. They're trying, okay, I don't want to name the company I'm referring to, but there's been other companies where they make models to be used by other systems, and they kind of justify the fact that they make these models, and to kind of hide the fact that they're making them for other games, they make their own rule sets. And it's really just there just to have some rules. And guys, this is what this feels like. It's like, well, here's some rules if you want to play with these models we have. It's not going to be a real tactical competitive thing, but here you go. And man, that's not what I was after. Now, before I go into too much more, let me tell you about a little splash of my hope of what's going on here. When I was listening to the rumors coming up, one of the rumors I heard about was the talk about 3 ages. The first age was going to be more of their skirmish games. So this is the smaller size. The second age, okay, there's your regular fantasy, Warhammer. And then the last one, that's their Apocalypse. This is their Unbound. This is everything. So maybe this is simple rules just for a small skirmish game, so that if you have a little bit of time, like, hey, you want to have a fun little game? Sure. I grab my 10 models, you grab your 20, we have a little skirmish. This is all the rules we need. We can get in, we can play. And later on, maybe next year, who knows when, they're going to come out with the next age, and it's going to have all the rules for the regular, and this is where they're going to flesh things out, make it competitive. That's my hope, and I really hope it's true. If that's true, and they can come back and make a solid rule set to use with their fantastic models, I will be all over that. I have my worries, though, because if that was your plan and you're going to be doing that, you would probably want to lead first with the age that's your regular game, your 9th edition. And the reason why you do that is because then you don't piss everybody off. With talking to local fantasy players and watching all the videos on YouTube, the vast majority of people are flipping out. They're saying, what the hell is this? This is not 9th edition. This is barely even fantasy. What other systems are out there? Because I'm ready to just jump ship and go. And I would hope that GW would have the foresight to see this coming. That if they're not going to be upfront with this and say, okay, wait, this is a skirmish game, the rest is coming later, this is really just shooting yourself in the foot. So then you got to start thinking about other ideas. And this is where I got to the idea of wondering if they're actually trying to bring fantasy to the same play style as 40K. Bring it to round bases. Bring it to a simpler system where, oh, can I charge 2d6? I'm in range. Let's do this. Just really simplified rule sets that, if you're running 2 different systems, there's a problem. And a good example I can do with Warhammer Fantasy is they used to have the Warmachine side with the Jacks, and then you also had the Horde side with the Beasts. And they were their own rule sets. They didn't interact, and they're kind of almost competing against themselves. Well, eventually what Privateer Press did is they said, well, you know what? Let's redo this. Let's go to Mark II, the second version of the rules, and we're going to change up the points and the rules so that they can play together. So that instead of competing with ourselves, everybody gets to play together with all these models. So my hope, here's a second possible thing, is that they decide, let's maybe do that here. Instead of having 2 separate game systems, we're going to make one set of rules, and then you can play your 40K against fantasy. Now, this is total, conspiracy theory. There's not really a lot out there to support it. But when I look at these models from the Age of Sigmar, and they look just like 40K models, and they're going around bases, and they're going to a simple rule set, just like 40K, it makes you wonder if maybe the next age is to like, guess what? Here's your 9th edition, and it's also the 40K edition, and it's the same rules. I don't know. I would find both equally interesting. If they came out with a 9th edition that was, like I said, no FAQ needed. This is a solid rule set that has everything you needed. Go out there and let's kick some butt in those tournaments. That'd be great. I'd be right back in there. probably going double. I'm still not going to give up Fantasy or Warmachine because I still love that, but I'd be playing both. If they do the same thing where they say, okay, guess what? Now we have a new edition, and if you want to fight your lasers up against your bow and arrows, do it. Here's the rules. Make it happen. We have balanced it as best we can. Sure, that sounds really cool. I'll try that out too. So either way, no matter what my wishful thinking is, we have Age of Sigmar now. It is maybe a good thing that the rules have made simple, because if that's the issue with Games Workshop, that you have so many problems with your rules and we need these FAQs, where are the FAQs? Well, maybe a simple rule set is what they're going for. Again, being a TO would be very difficult right now of how you run these events, how you're going to find a winner and all this stuff when it's not really designed to be like that. So one of the things you almost need right now is you almost need somebody to come out and to add that structure. But I'm worried that if somebody has to do that and add like a new structure to it, that GW might try and lash back at them, right? Because you're basically going in and making a new rule set to use with their models, and I'm not sure what GW would do there. But either way, guys, let's turn this positive again. If you are a new player and you do not know what fantasy used to be, and you're like, hey, I want to play a game where I want to grab some models, and you're going to grab your models, I'm going to grab mine, and we're going to have what I said was the other part I liked about fantasy was the size of the game, and we're just playing this big, huge battle. You can still do that. You can buy those models and do it. The rules are there. They're now easier to read. You don't have to read this 100-page thing. It's now just 4 pages. There's still the price of the models, but hey, there's nothing saying how many models you need, right? If Jimmy has 2 boxes of models and Tom has 10, whatever, we can still have a game, and there's kind of tiebreakers at the end and stuff. But yeah, it can work out, and it can be an okay game. But honestly, guys, it's not the thing that's going to pull me back. This Age of Sigmar, to be 100% honest from my side, was a huge disappointment and a huge missed opportunity for Games Workshop. So from my point, I have not played it. I'm going to say that right now. I have not played it, and I don't intend to play it. I am still holding out, hoping that there'll be a 9th edition or a second age that has that rule set so I can play those tactical games that I missed. But right now, I'm getting that from Warmachine. And Privateer Press is doing a great job of supporting it. Privateer Press is basically just needing to point back to what Games Workshop used to be. Oh, what a Games Workshop used to be. They used to have this great set of rules that they supported and ran these big events, and they had their own forum that they'd answer your questions on, and they were really upfront, and they'd be talking to you to explain things. That's what Privateer Press is now. And so maybe I'm just living in the past, but for those who are hoping that I'm going to say, like, I'm going to be back in this, unfortunately not. This will still be a Warmachine channel. I do not even expect me to try one game of this new Age of Sigmar. But if you are new to fantasy and you're like, hey, man, this Age of Sigmar could be cool and fun, all the power to you. Go to one of the other channels. I'm sure there's tons of reviews out there. Buy your models. Have fun. I'm not going to say that your game sucks. I'm going to just say it's not the fantasy I fell in love with. That's my position. So there you go. I got it all out. And you know what, guys? Just have fun. So talk to you later. Bye.